Most students aren't looking for a flawless program. In fact, they're just looking to know that somebody actually cares about them. In this episode today, we're going to be walking through 5 simple steps that you can put into practice in your youth ministry to create opportunities for intentional conversations. Because the reality is that when kids feel heard, they feel loved. So I went up to my wife who serves with us and I said, hey, can you check if they need a Bible? She was like, yeah. So she went up to them, asked their friend who invited them. All 3 went back to our youth room where we keep the Bibles with my wife. And I went back there 20 minutes later to get a Bible for another student. And they were back there sitting down talking. So while free time was going on, my wife had started explaining to them, hey, this is the Bible. And then it came out they're Catholic. And so they started asking questions about, well, our Bible's different and why is our Bible different? And so this just sparked a 30-minute conversation where they're just sitting in our youth room, 3 of them with a leader, just having this conversation.
Yeah, so part of our youth group now, and he's like, what is it with people asking me what school I go to? And he's like, what are you gonna show up there or something? He's like, that's so creepy. Why would you ask what school I go to? I'm like, I've never thought of that in a threat, weird. He's like, are you stalking me? Where are you gonna show up at my school?
We used to say this, and I think it's still generally true, but it was programs get people, or relationships keep people. Mm-hmm. I think we've even moved past that, man, now to where it's people get people and people keep people. Now our programs are the vehicle, so it's not they're unimportant. But at the very time, I think it's I think the kids that we are seeing, it's not because it's youth group and it's a lot of fun. I think it's just my friend wants me to come to this and I'm willing to go check it out and see what this is about. And by the way, when I get here, I have a lot of fun, so I'd love to come back. Yeah. So one of the things that we've talked about a lot of times in youth ministry is that the emphasis oftentimes is often on programs. I know that you've been asked the questions what's the magic program?
Yeah, what's the program that's going to reach everybody in our area? I'm oh, wow.
Yeah. And so even when we look into scripture, right, we see that the why, the gospel, was much more emphasized than the how. And that looked differently. And Paul even says, I become all things to all men so I may win some to Christ. And we do understand that the early church in Acts 2 kind of gives us somewhat of a model, but we also understand that look, as long as we're staying true to the gospel, we're staying true to biblical values, that how is always going to change. Yeah. And one of the things that we've seen in youth ministry is that for a long time, there was an attractional model where if you build it, they will come. And now that's not the case anymore. Yep. And so the reality is, as youth pastors, if you're just getting in, if you're newer to the youth ministry, or maybe you've been in for a while, the reality is that kids really just want to know, do they care about me and are they going to tell me the truth? But oftentimes if our programs are kind of the focus and we have such great programs, we have such a great youth service or whatever, but there's no real opportunity for them to actually ask their questions or to actually make them think directly, then oftentimes it's not going to be as high impact. And so today we're going to be looking at 5 things you can put into practice right now, simple practices that you can put into your youth ministry that can actually help you create intentional conversations. And so Keith, what are some way, maybe before we jump in, you've seen that change too, right? You've seen kids are just more so wanting to say hey, what do I do about this, or asking questions more so? How have you kind of seen what's the biggest shift in kind of you build it, they will come, and now it's no longer what's the biggest thing you can point to and be that tells me there's a definite shift?
Well, I think when I first got into youth ministry, the culture was okay, sit and listen, so listen to what we have to say, and then you can go and take that and and do with what live your life, whatever. And I think now there's so much willingness to. And I think part of that too was people didn't feel comfortable sharing or asking questions because they might look weird or And I remember how it was almost even in our own youth ministry, we had some breakout sessions at camp one year, and our camp used to look we would bring so many non-believers to camp, and it was a lot of the students would give their life to Christ for the first time at camp. And I remember sitting with those students that didn't know our church culture, and not that we were intentionally trying to say no, you can't ask questions or you can't, But I remember being caught off guard by how bold their questions were and how detailed their questions, especially when we did a guy's purity breakout, and there was guys that were asking they're am I not supposed to ask this? I really need to know the answer to this. How far, and they were going into extreme detail about it. It's and so when it comes to Even just the culture shift. I think now that's like so commonplace where students aren't afraid of what you think about them by asking questions. I mean, some of them are, but the majority of them now are like it's such an openness to dialogue that I think that's been a huge shift over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with we do operate within programs as youth ministry, right? And all our programs might look different, but we do operate within programs, within camps, within retreats. Like we all kind of have those in common. And so there are things we can certainly do outside of the ministry. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But really what we're going to be highlighting today is how to actually create margin for intentional conversations within your programs.
Well, and I think the big shift from my mind has been over the years that programs used to be like the end. Like that, and like the goal was the program. Like it was like that's what we're focusing on. And now what I've found is programs are like the means to the end. The end is like, engaging students in dialogue, like about the gospel, about, deeper things of the faith, equipping them. And so we use programs as a connection point to go deeper, through those conversations. And so the way that I frame this with our leaders is, we want to make sure that we're not spending the time that we have in program, like, or, that like the before and after talking to each other as adults. Like we want to make sure that's like, we have students in the room, like, how hard it is to get this many students together, like, and so challenging them to say like, hey, what would it look like for you guys to have 5 conversations with people, before youth group starts or whatever. And so they have to be intentional about that. And at one point, we actually implemented a slap rule where I said, "Hey, listen, if I'm talking to another adult, like at youth group, you can come slap me." Like, and it just kind of helps us to focus. And it was like a silly way of just saying, like, "Hey, we want to make sure that we're leveraging the time that we have to have those intentional conversations with students." So, what do you actually talk to them about? Like, what is the like? What if you're like, okay, I mainly just get up and speak, or I, maybe have some small talk, but like, what are some things that we can actually have during the conversation? Like, how do we start it? Go into detail about like, what does it look like to have an intentional conversation with a student?
Yeah. So let's define it before we actually jump into how to create them. What the point of an intentional conversation is really just, if you know that, if you don't know where they are spiritually, of course, the intentional conversation is find out where they are spiritually and clearly present the gospel. Yeah. So that would be the big thing. If there's a kid that you're unsure about, that is a new visitor, that isn't a believer, like the intentional conversation for them is, hey, where are you at with all of this? Here's the gospel. What do you kind of think about that? With a student that you do know as a believer, maybe you've noticed like, hey, I don't know when's the last time I really talked to them, right? We don't want to just take them for granted either. I think a lot of times in youth ministry, we celebrate as we should. And the parable of the Good Shepherd, explains this to us that it is more valuable when one lost sheep returns than 99 who need no repentance. But at the same time, we do want to celebrate faithfulness. And so making sure that those kids don't feel lost by having intentional conversations and kind of helping them understand, it's like, look, I know there are kids here who probably need, some time with a leader, maybe a little bit more than you, but that's not a bad thing. That's actually because like we're so proud of what you're doing, and so just keep helping us and keep living for Christ, and we're always here if you need anything. So really, I would say on one side it's discerning where they are with the gospel, and then for the ones who are doing well, just like encouraging them and telling them how proud you are, but also just kind of intentional conversations are giving them an opportunity to bring up anything in their life that's going on. And so that kind of being the space out within the programs, but outside of the planned program where it's like, actually, I'm having a pretty rough week, like this happened, or hey, my parents are getting a divorce, or we found out we're moving, or I'm really struggling and just feel stressed over what, like, that's really when we talk about intentional conversations, what we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, in our last episode, I mentioned that resource, 6 conversations, and in the just kind of I'll go through like different categories that help me to kind of frame this, because it really does get like, instead of just saying like, how was your day?
Yeah.
Like, because that could just be a service level, or like, so social conversations focus on relationships, community, belonging. A question might be, who are your people? Like, who are your people? Like, who are your friends? Like, who are you the closest to?
Yeah.
Emotional conversations, they explore the emotional well-being. So feelings, internal states. How are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling about everything that's going on? Like, how are you feeling about school right now? How are you feeling about, walking into a room where you don't know anybody?
Yeah.
Like that, asking a new visitor like that, like it actually kind of, it's like, wow, they're aware of how I might feel.
Yeah.
Physical conversations. This is a little bit more awkward to ask. What are you doing with your body? That might not be a good. Like,
I don't. I
intro.
think I'd rephrase that if I was going to ask
Yeah.
a teen that.
Relates to physical health, environment, and the body's experiences. Yeah, I wouldn't ask that question to a teenager. What are you doing with your body?
That's a quick way to get fired.
Table that one. Cognitive conversations. What are you thinking, or like, what are you thinking about? What's going on, like in the news today?
So go up to him and be like, "What were you thinking?" Like that's
No,
the cognitive.
That's not a good question because they don't know. They don't know what they're thinking. Yeah, but that invites thoughts, ideas, learning, beliefs, intellectual curiosity, and then volitional is asking that question like, "What are you choosing?" So uncovers decisions, goals. So like I mean, we talk about this a lot of time around this time of year. It's like, okay, like about college decisions or what they're doing after graduation, or what subjects they're interested in, and then of course spiritual conversations is where are you finding meaning? So it touches on faith, values, purpose, connection, and of course those aren't the exact questions that you would per se ask, but surrounding those different categories has been helpful. One of the ones that like it gets like in more in depth to how their week went. It's like what was something that surprised you this week?
Yeah.
And it, like they have to like think through that. Like they can't just say like good.
Well, my favorite is I always just like, "Hey, what's up?" And the number one answer I get, the ceiling, the sky, and I'm like, okay, well, I just
hate dad jokes.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't realize this. So literally this week, so my 14-year-old, because like he's part of our youth group now, and he's like, "What is it with people like asking me like what school I go to?" And he's like, "What are you gonna show up there or something?" Like he's like, "That's so creepy. Why would you ask what school I could?" I'm like, I've never thought of that like in a threat, like in a weird. He's like, "Are you stalking me? Like, where you're gonna show up at my school?" And even though he's homeschooled, like it's just funny. It's like that's just an odd question to ask first, and I've never heard that before. And I was like, I asked that like because I just want to connect them. But it's like, oh, you go to this school, so does so and so, and I want to connect them, whatever. But maybe we should. Put that in practice. Listen to the teenagers too about what questions are
maybe a little bit.
But I would say, what are you doing with your body is not a good question.
I would. So instead of asking what are you doing with your body, we're going to give you 5 simple ways that you can create intentional conversations in your youth ministry. And the number one way to create intentional conversations in youth ministry. Hey everyone, as you listen to this episode on how to start intentional conversations, I've just got a quick question for you. When was the last time you took an intentional step to grow as a youth pastor or youth director? The Beyond the Youth Room podcast hosts an online community called the Youth Ministry Mastermind, which is designed by youth pastors for youth pastors. And in that community is filled with like-minded youth pastors across the country and globe, working tirelessly to advance the gospel in their local communities. And it's filled with free resources, live trainings, helpful community and conversation, as well as cohorts you can be a part of, all designed for you. And so what we'd encourage you to do is take a second, check out the description below, click that link and join the Youth Ministry Mastermind. It is free to join and we'd love to see you in there. And when you join, you'll get a message from me, Ryan, asking how we can help you, if we can connect for a call. And we just love to hear what is going on in your ministry, celebrate along with you, help any challenges you might be facing. So go ahead, take just 30 seconds, click that link, check out the Youth Ministry Mastermind, and then we hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. And the number one way to create intentional conversations in youth ministry is to set the tone early. Mm-hmm. The reality is that students make up their mind within the first few seconds or minutes of what you're all about. Yeah. And so if they walk into your youth ministry and they see that there's a lot of fun activities going on and there's all this stuff, that's not bad, but what they're probably going to connect is, oh, okay, so this is about having fun. Versus if they walk in and, there's somebody's deep in Bible study, like they're going to be like, oh, this is all about like, what is this kind of about? Yep. So what we try and do is hit that middle ground between, we don't know where any kid's coming from spiritually. But in those first few minutes, we want to have set the tone early to where they understand like this is about helping you connect with God. Yeah. and why that's so important. And of course, we do that using God's word and prayer and, encouraging one another. But we want them to know, hey, even if I'm far away from God, we're all about helping you understand who God is and what he wants for you. And if I am already a believer and I'm just showing up, we want you to understand that that's what we're about, and we're going to invite you in to join that mission. Yeah. And so the way that we do that is we need to control, and we always want to be careful saying control in ministry because sometimes
just say first impressions.
Yeah.
We first few seconds matter.
We want that to be something that we have a plan for, I guess is a better way to say it. Like we want to have a plan for when a person walks in, the door the first time, like, what do they experience? So that can even be a simple thing like, hey, is your welcome area in your youth room? Well, it might actually be better for it to be outside your youth room. So when a kid walks in, it's not chaos, it's not craziness, it's not like, oh, I see my friend over there, I just want to go talk to my friend. Where you can kind of that first few seconds just get to know their name, just get to know them. So our youth room is in the back of the building, but we actually meet kids at the front. So any kid who comes checks in, because then that gives us as a leader, and normally 99% of our visitors come with a friend. We then walk back with them and their friend. And so that gives us that ability, just a small thing to kind of be, oh, a leader talked to me. Oh, my friend knows me. They kind of feel known in those very first few seconds. Yeah. And then normally we have another leader who's kind of just hanging out in the youth room. And so when they kind of pass them off, it's like, oh, and they'll, hey, this is so-and-so, like, oh, that's so nice to meet you, like whatever. So we want to really have a plan for those first few seconds. So if you're just like, well, we'll get visitor information at some point during the night. Or, the old way it used to be, which I don't think your youth ministry does this anymore. Maybe it does. I don't know. But I was watching a live stream of a service. I won't explain why. But and their like live stream, it was like going back in time to like the 50s. I was like, good. Like even the video quality was like, this looks like. But anyways, they did, hey, if you're a first time visitor, just raise your hand. And one of our ushers walking back will give you a welcome packet. And I was like, we used to do this, and I know there's churches that still do that. So it's not to say there's anything unbiblical, but point being, it's like we want to control or have a good first impression the first few moments there at youth group. And then we want to be up front, what we're all about. We don't want to hide the ball. Like, it's not like, oh, great, we're having so much fun. And it's like,
bait and switch.
Yeah. We want to be clear about what we're about. And so the way we do that is, any first-time visitor, we've talked about this before, their lanyard, their gospel is right there. And so as we flip through those gifts on the lanyard, we always say, hey, and just so you're clear, like, this is what we believe. We'll talk more about this tonight. Hey, if you're still figuring that out, you're welcome here. There's no pressure, but we just want you to know. We want you to know what we believe. And we've gotten to the point now where really a student walks in, if a first-time visitor, we give them to fill out the visitor card, and then their friend, we hand them a lanyard. We say, you got it? And go, yep. And they walk them back, and we can hear them around the corner, and they say, so this is what we believe, God, Chris, be with him, and they just walk through the gospel. So now and we're empowering their friend to say, this is what we're all about, this is what we believe, and that makes a big difference. So kind of that question to kind of reflect on is, what does a first-time student see, hear, and feel in the first 60 seconds? And you know what? You can even time this. Like, you can even, again, within reason, but like, think through that. How long does it take for somebody to walk from our door?
That's what we've been more mindful of recently, where, because, like where our youth room is, it's like, it's not just like in the back of it, it's like upstairs and then in the back. It's like a maze to get there. Yeah. And so we're like, the experience started when they walked in the front door. Yes. And then it's like, I think I'm going the right place. So we're intentionally trying to put like greeters and stuff along the way so that people don't get lost. And then also, we have signage and stuff, but it's like, we want them to be, to be able to walk, walk in and have a good experience when they walk in. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Number 2, we want to create multiple touch points throughout the night. And that's kind of a business word or a consulting word, I guess would be the best way to put it. But the reality is, do we have multiple opportunities throughout the night where we can create intentional conversations? Because maybe
not physical touch points.
Yes.
We want to be clear.
Do not ask them what they're doing with their body. Want to be clear.
That would not be good.
But the reality is, a lot of times you might say, hey, well, our youth program, the first 30 minutes are just hanging out, and then we have our program. Well, if something happens in that 30 minutes or something sparks a question during the lesson, do they have an opportunity to then come to you? So if it's all kind of like, oh, well, we'll just kind of create that margin here, and then once we get into this, then there's no room. Now, again, that doesn't mean we've all had middle schoolers where you're teaching a lesson and they raise their hand and they just keep it raised for and eventually you have to be like, hey,
we're not taking
we're not going to take question right now. But the point is, like, small groups. Hey, in the transition to small group, if there's a first-time visitor, has that small group leader been empowered and encouraged and equipped to kind of have a conversation with them? Hey, like, do you go to church anywhere? No. Hey, that's so cool that you're here tonight. Hey, do you know what you believe yet? No. Hey, this is kind of what we talked about. What do you think about that? Or, hey, do you know what you believe about God yet? Or are you still figuring that out? That's the question that I ask kids. Do you know what you believe about God yet? Or are you still figuring that out? And that binary makes it easy for them to kind of classify. It's like, oh, I know what I believe. And of course, that doesn't mean that they're, saved. Like, they might know what they believe, but it might be something other than the gospel. Yeah. But we want to make sure that we're not just like okay, well, we did the welcome, boom, boom, now pour you into the rest of the kids. So one of the
Yeah.
ways we do that is we have our volunteers or students welcoming, and then I will kind of go around to our kids who are first time visitors, or I'll identify leaders and say, hey, let's ask them if they have a Bible. So that's the second touch point that we have throughout the night is, hey, do you have a Bible at home that you like and you use?
Yeah.
And not
It's
just
like
do you
I
have a
have a
Bible,
family Bible that's
correct?
KJV and
Yep.
has all of our names.
Or a kid's Bible or things like that, or one on the shelf. So, hey, do you have a Bible that you like and you use? And always err on the side of just, we'll just give you a Bible. Like, even if you're like, well, I kind of, it's like, let's just give you one. Would you want one? I've had maybe one or two kids say, no, I'm good. And the whole time in youth ministry, so be prepared for that. If a kid's like, I don't really want a Bible. We've had kids who are coming from other religions who, it's like, I don't know what my parents would think if I brought a Bible home or things like that. But that really gives us another conversation and touch point. So the other night we had two first-time visitors. They were, we didn't have small group that night, but they were high school girls. So I went up to my wife who serves with us and I said, hey, can you check if they need a Bible? She was like, yeah. So she went up to them, asked their friend who invited them. All three went back to our youth room where we keep the Bibles with my wife. And I went back there 20 minutes later to get a Bible for another student, and they were back there sitting down talking. So while free time was going on, my wife had started explaining to them, hey, this is the Bible, and then it came out they're Catholic, and so they started asking questions about, well, our Bible's different, and why is our Bible different? And so this just sparked a 30-minute conversation where they're just sitting in our youth room, three of them with a leader, just having this conversation.
Yeah.
So having that second touch point to come back around where it's like, okay, no, you guys really do believe, like it's not just something on the wall, it's not just anything on a card, like this is really what you're all about. And so I want to create those multiple touch points, and let's ask the question, reflect, and I'd love to hear any thoughts you have of how you guys do that. But how many personal interactions does a student have on a typical youth night? So
yeah. So and I'm saying youth night on Wednesday. So we do two programs a week, one just for middle school on Sunday mornings, and then one for middle school and high school, which are like our small groups. So we have large group teaching, and then they break up into small groups based on grade and gender. So the touch point, if they're a new student, they come in, they check in, they get our newcomer card and they fill that out. They get a newcomer bag right now. We're switching to lanyards and everything. But then we try to connect them to another student who's maybe their age.
What percentage of your first-time visitors would you say are not coming with a friend?
It's actually kind of high.
Is it really?
Surprisingly.
So it's very like opposite in our youth ministry. So I wonder,
you have a lot of students. I mean, now we do. Now, what often happens though is even if someone is, I mean, like I can't even think of a time where they walked in at the same time unless they literally rode together. Sometimes that happens, but what happens often is someone will invite a friend. They'll get there super early before their friend arrives.
Oh, all our kids will wait at the door. They won't go back to the room until their friend gets there.
Oh no, I'm saying like the new student comes and their friend isn't there.
That
happens every time in our ministry.
That doesn't happen often.
And so it's the most awkward thing because like new students typically they arrive early.
Yeah.
And like because they're like they don't know like what if there's check-in or whatever. So but yeah, that happens almost every single time.
That's so interesting.
And so we're just like kind of it's like, well, I'm sure they're going to be here any minute now. You're like it could be awkward. So we try to connect them with someone in their small group. Early on so that they can do. And so they come to the initial check-in, introduction, and then we try to connect them with another leader that they're going to be with throughout the night or a student that's going to be in their group, and then we have our large group teaching time. And then I found that and I was thinking about this too when you said the multiple connection points is sometimes they don't know where to go when we break off. Everybody else that's been there, they know exactly where to go and stuff and what leaders to follow. But I'm like, oh, like, okay, we need to connect them. It's like, oh yeah, if you're this age or group or whatever, then you go to this room and with this leader to follow them. And then of course throughout the discussion, like in the small groups, hopefully they're having several touch points, where they're being asked questions and they can choose to respond or not. And then at the end when they come back, usually I say like, hey, how did you like everything? Or so that's the follow up. But I found that even just when you first introduce them, like we talked about like that. I just want to put this in before we go to the next one to set the tone early. Yeah. I found that if you can get someone laughing at you, like so I just use self-deprecating humor where so for instance like say like, oh, like, hey, what's your name, and then I almost always use this line on new students and it works is whatever their name is, say that's your middle name, even if it's a girl's name and they're like, what? And I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. But then they say, what grade are you in? They say, oh, I'm in seventh grade. I'm like, me too. And they're like, they almost like believe you for a second. They're like, wait a second, is he really in seventh grade? It's like, he's obviously a middle aged man with a beard and stuff. So anyways, it gets them laughing, and then you can go from there and just say, and then you can introduce more stuff. But I found that just getting them to laugh early on really kind of relieves the tension of like, oh, this is new, I don't know what to do, and you can go from there, kind of build on a base.
Yeah, and one thing that we've touched on multiple times. Number 3, the way to create intentional conversations is to leave margin in your programs, and so ministry happens in the margins. If you pack your schedule so tight as a program, the relational moments are going to get squeezed out. And so if you think of Sunday morning as a gathering, right, to encourage, to build up. But if we only ever met Sunday morning, like that's not when community is really being built. And so we want to make sure that the same thing is true in our youth programs, where it's not I from the time I walk in, everything is programmed to me, and then I walk out. And so some of the ways that we create margin without maybe your time frame's tight, right? Like maybe it's all church on Wednesday night and you just have the youth for an hour out of that. We've talked to a couple of youth pastors, that's the case, or things like that, where they're doing a family model. So you break for an hour and you don't have that much time. You don't need to just say, we're going to take 30 minutes just to hang out to be able to have these conversations. Now, that's been very beneficial for us to be able to do that. But it's really just in the transitions, like from one thing to another, when you're moving from game to the lesson or lesson to small groups, like just, hey, where are you with all this? Like, what do you think? And so we do that a couple ways. We always use transitions to try and kind of ask a question or walk with that student or whatever. And again, it's not always a new student. Sometimes this is a student we just feel like, hey, I haven't connected with them in a while. I think I need to connect with them. Organized isn't always best. And that some of us hear that and we're like, oh, thank goodness. And some of us are like, what do you mean? But the reality is it's okay to just say, hey, tonight I'm not going to put together a whole sermon. As long as the gospel is presented every night, which is we're super clear about, regardless of what the lesson looks like or night looks like, the gospel is always going to be presented. But it's okay to say, you know what, tonight I'm just going to have a 5-minute, 10-minute devotional, and then we're gonna go outside and we're gonna hang out outside. Now, if we just use that time hanging out outside to play games and have fun, then we've missed the point.
Yeah.
But if we talk to our leaders and say, hey, the reason we're doing this tonight is I just feel like everything's been really crazy, really chaotic lately, and we just want to take some time. So let's go ahead and let's just make sure I have a point of going around saying, hey, what have you been up to and how are things going and all that stuff. And then the last thing I'll say is always hang back. So I have intentionally gotten to a point where I don't have a small group anymore. And even going to camp this year, I do not have a small group. And the purpose is because kids will still come to me and ask questions, but then I have the ability to connect them with their small group leader. As much as we say talk to your small group leader, most of the time they're still going to come to you because you're the one who taught on it. You're the one who in our case, wrong. They think I'm the one with the most biblical knowledge. Many of my volunteers are much more, they went to Bible college, they went to seminary. I did not do that, and so it's like I study and I learn and I teach, but oftentimes if they actually want to know the most person with the most biblical knowledge, a lot of times it's not me in our ministry, which I'm very thankful for because I have people around, but they still come to me. And then I can say, you know what, that's a great question. Why don't you ask your small group leader that? Or, hey, bring them in. So, but by hanging back, we kind of give them that ability to ask that question. And we've always maybe you've experienced this before, where like students kind of hanging back and looking around and you're like, I think they want to talk to somebody about something. But if you kind of bolt out of the room because you have your small group and you can't leave, 6th and 7th grade boys unattended for more than 3 minutes, or else things go very, very poorly. We want to make sure that we always hang back. And so the question for this to kind of think as a listener is your schedule serving relationships or suffocating them?
That's good.
So when we go to camp, when we go to retreats, is it just let's pack all the fun we can into this week, or are we creating space to just kind of say, let's
Well, and we had to make that decision. So we've talked about different options for camp, like for our churches. Like we go to different camps now, but we went to the same place. And one of the things that we're very big on having small group discussions like at camp. Like that is really like what we want to facilitate a lot.
Yeah.
And even just the camp that we were going to didn't really have space for that. Like
It's not designed for that.
It's not designed to actually sit around and, like there's not really like literally physical space that you can do that at scale. And so part of that was even help, making the decision like to go to a different camp that actually helped us to facilitate conversations where you can see everybody's eyeballs, not just like stacked bunks everywhere. And so part of that too is being intentional about that to the point where like, would you actually choose the location of your camp based around how you can facilitate discussions like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Number 4, we kind of talked about this, but make yourself available. And so being present isn't the same as being available. If you're always running programs or solving problems, students aren't going to come up to you. So make sure that you can kind of, that triage of like, is this that big of a deal that it would be so critical that I need to take time away from the students to do this? Yes or no. And so ruthlessly delegate everything you can. And then people over programs. So remember that like what programs, and we used to say this, and I think it's still generally true, but it was programs get people, or relationships keep people. I think we've even moved past that, man, now to where it's like people get people and people keep people. Like now our programs are the vehicle, so it's not like they're unimportant. But at the very time, I think it's like, I think the kids that we are seeing, it's not because it's like youth group and it's a lot of fun. I think it's just like, my friend wants me to come to this and, I'm willing to go check it out and see what this is about. And by the way, when I get here, I have a lot of fun, so I'd love to come back. But that idea of, dude, if you have, easy math purposes, if you have 100 kids come to your youth one night and one of them is lost, don't know what they believe, so much more valuable for you to let the program suffer a little bit, for you to have a conversation or somebody to have a conversation with that student. Hey, what do you believe about this? Or what do you believe? Why wouldn't you, what keeps you from trusting Christ? Like, remember that that's really more important than the lesson starting on time or the small groups always having their main thing or things like that. And so within reason, but making sure that we're prepared to leave the 99.
2 things on that. So so years ago, our church like did like a secret shopper, like they hired a secret shopper to come obviously not shopping, but like to come evaluate our church service. And one of the feedback things that they gave was, so usually these are like non-believers that they just say, hey, we're going to pay you to come visit a church and just tell us about the experience. And one of the observations was people with name tags seem too busy. Like the ones, it was basically like our staff and leaders. Like,
so take the name tags off.
Just take the name tags off, and then everybody seems busy. But it's like and that was something we were like, whoa, like, are we not available? Like, we're present, like we're running around doing everything, but are we doing so much that like people don't even seem that we're approachable? And it was like really convicting. So we made some changes on that. The second thing is an experience that I had with this. So I was in Louisville, Kentucky, visiting some family members, and went to Southeastern Church.
Kyle Idleman's church,
And
we shouldn't say that, by the way. Kyle Idleman's church. Well, Kyle Idleman is the pastor.
He's one of the pastors there. And so, but we had the family that we were visiting that we knew. They knew the youth pastor there, and they just said, hey, like Keith's in town, like he's a youth pastor, from a different church, like you mind if you just chat with them or meet up with them, whatever, to show you around. And this is like a Sunday morning where they had like all their programming and stuff that they have for students. And literally, like I was expecting like just say like, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. Like, hey, you can take a just walk around and and it's like, no, like this guy who was the leader at the time, like literally walked me through, introduced me to people, like showed me everything, like their philosophy behind what they do. And I'm like, do you need to go? Like, so like, do you need, he's like, oh no, like we're good. Like, we have leaders. And I'm like, how do you do this? I was like, teach me your ways, a wise one. Like, it was like really fascinating how available this person was to just like, and he would do this with parents or like, and just to kind of walk around the ministry, show them things and just explain why they do things the way that they do. And I was like, you guys don't do anything right now. Like, no, our programs are happening right now. And I'm like, what? And so it was just a really refreshing thing. It's like, wow, this is possible. Like, to actually be more available, not to be like, resetting your computer because it just crashed and the slides don't work now. It's like, or, you're trying to put fires out another way or whatever. And so, so I think that was really convicting for me to kind of see that it's possible to be available in the midst of programming.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Lastly, number 5 way to create intentional conversations in youth ministry is lower the barrier to entry. And so most students are not going to initiate a conversation unless you make yourself available and make it easy. And so clarify what you want them to do and give them a simple next step. So we've
Yeah.
talked about this. One of the ways that we help students respond to the gospel presentation is, they raise hands, but at the same time, we don't want, we've all had kids raise hand for and be like, oh, that's what that meant. Oh, I thought. So the way that we do it is, hey, if you made that decision, if you have more questions, what I want you to do is come up to me and just give me a fist bump, and I'll know what that means, and I've got something I want to give to you. And that's really helped our kids come up afterwards to say, like, I've literally had kids be like,
Yeah.
and it's so they're like, you told me to do this, so I'm trusting that you have something to say after this because I don't know what I'm saying. Literally, that's the posture, is like.
Yeah.
And that's so easy because it's like there's no mistaking that. Like if a kid gives up and gives me a fist bump, I just go, hey, did you make that decision tonight? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's so cool. Like that's awesome. It's the best decision you can ever make. Hey, I just want to walk through that real quick to make sure that you really understand that. And then, and I tell them I have something to give to them, and that's our new believer booklet. So it kind of breaks down. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what all I'm supposed to do, but like, I know I'm supposed to give you a fist bump, and I'm trusting that you'll take care of the rest. And so we need to be super clear about our next steps.
Yep.
But oftentimes our application or our invitation looks like, okay, and if you're here, do this. And if you're here, do this. And we just can't. Like
it's just confusing. Like,
Yeah.
You don't have a clear path.
Yeah. And we were even, I even heard a gospel presentation the other day where I was just kind of like, I was confused. I was like, what do you mean? Like the way they were saying it. And I knew what they were trying to say, but I was like, if I didn't understand this would be so just like all over the place. And so that's why, we love Dare to Share's Life in 6 Words and using that. So, but make sure that you lower that barrier and make a regular practice of asking questions. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, I haven't been doing this in our ministry, we're going to put that into practice. Don't make one kid feel like you're like trying it all out on like them and be like, I've got 6 types of questions that I need to ask you.
What are you doing with your body?
Make sure that like, because what their friends will be like, that was weird. Like their friends who come. Yeah. So build up to that or make it regular. So now if our students bring a friend, like they know I'm probably, or a leader's probably going to ask them at some point, like, hey, what do you believe? Or what do you think? Or do you have a Bible? And then it just kind of becomes normal because when they invite their friend and then you go and ask their friend too, they're kind of like, oh yeah, they asked me that too. Like we've literally had kids be like, oh no, the Bibles are so cool. Like you should go get one. And that's like, wow, like that's really cool to hear like another kid say that. So the question to reflect is, have you made it obvious that students are invited to approach you?
That's good. Yeah, well, that concludes another episode of Beyond the Youth Room podcast. If you are seeing this for the first time and you haven't seen our online community for youth leaders, we have a youth ministry mastermind. It's in the link in the description. It's completely free to join, and in there you'll see updated content like this, but also resources on how to grow your youth ministry. So we want to invite you to join that. Over 200 youth pastors all around the country, all around the world actually have joined, and we want you to be part of that community. So take a look at the link in the description, and we'll see you on the next episode.